In a recent episode on this channel, I discussed the influences behind and the composition of Rush's classic song, Xanadu, a song which has at its heart influences from the poem Kubla Khan by Samuel Taylor Coleridge, as well as references to James Hilton's classic book, Lost Horizon. Upon completion of that episode, I got to thinking about that there are so many other classic progressive rock songs that are based on, or at least inspired by, classic literature. And so in this episode, I'm going to share some of my thinking in that area with you. I'm sure the list I'm going to share with you here is far from complete. So of course, please feel free to comment and let me know if there are significant songs that I've missed, or if you would just like to share your thoughts about some of the songs that I'm going to talk about here today. Since we're starting off with Rush, let me jump off from Xanadu and Coleridge to the work of Ayn Rand. Rand is referenced very prominently in two of Rush's songs. The first album that Rush made with their new drummer and lyricist Neil Peart kicks off with the song Anthem, which is directly influenced by Rand's book of the same name. Rand is also very much an influence on Rush's classic track 2112, to the point where the band made a special acknowledgement of her influence in the liner notes of the album. This caused some rock and roll critics back in 1976 to connect Rush with Rand's politics and to insinuate that the members of the band were fascists, an insinuation that really angered Geddy Lee in particular, since his parents were both Holocaust survivors and lived in the Nazi concentration camps. In addition to those songs, there are, in Peart's early lyrics with Rush, numerous references to J.R.R. Tolkien's work in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. The songs The Necromancer and Rivendell come directly from there. The band Genesis had many literary references in their work as well. Of course, the Genesis classic Supper's Ready is directly based on the last book of the Bible's New Testament, the book of Revelation. Watcher of the Skies, from that same period of Genesis, took inspiration from Arthur C. Clarke's science fiction novel, Childhood's End. In their solo work, Mike Rutherford and Tony Banks would, of course, both make literary references. Tony Banks's A Curious Feeling and Mike Rutherford's Small Creep's Day come directly from various British novels, as we've discussed in a previous episode on the channel. Peter Gabriel would tend to get into these types of references also, although his were somewhat more oblique and not necessarily specified to the press. The song that in particular spurs some conversation in that area is The Return of the Giant Hogweed. Giant Hogweed was officially inspired, based on Genesis lore, by a newspaper article that Peter Gabriel read about the nasty toxic weeds finding their way across the British countryside. But there may be another reference that was unspecified that might have triggered the direction that this particular song took. In particular, there was a science fiction novel by the British writer John Wyndham, released in 1951, called The Day of the Triffids, a book that was popular enough that it would inspire the making of a now cult classic horror movie. So definitely the fellows in Genesis were, as Neil Peart was, very well read, and it showed in their music. Literary references would also appear in John Anderson's lyrics with Yes on a fairly regular basis during their classic period. Most notably among these are the song Close to the Edge, which directly takes cues from Hermann Hesse's classic novel Siddhartha. Then there's The Gates of Delirium, written a couple of years later, which takes its inspiration from Leo Tolstoy's War and Peace. In between those two songs was sandwiched the whole of Tales from Topographic Oceans, which allegedly was based on a single footnote from Parananda's Autobiography of a Yogi, which apparently was a long topic of discussion between John Anderson and Jamie Muir, the ex-percussionist from King Crimson, at Bill Bruford's wedding in 1973. Very, very interesting stuff. Continuing on, there's King Crimson. Their 1982 album, Beat, takes direct reference from various of the books written by the novelists of the Beat generation. Songs like Neil and Jack and Me, Sartori and Tangier, and The Howler come directly from the works of Neil Cassidy, Allen Ginsberg, and others. George Orwell's work has oftentimes been referenced in the music of the 70s as well, and that's particularly notable insofar as that Orwell's widow would not allow Orwell's novels to be directly referenced in popular music during her lifetime. This, however, did not stop David Bowie, at least not completely, from basing his 1974 album, Diamond Dogs, partially on Orwell's 1984. Bowie's original direction in recording that album was to write a rock opera based on the work until such time as he received a cease and desist order from Orwell's widow. By this time, however, Bowie had already started writing the opera and had completed several songs based on 1984, including the title track, Big Brother, and We Are the Dead. Based on the cease and desist, Bowie would change directions and create Diamond Dogs as we know it today, with references from William S. Burroughs around the Halloween Jack character. And then there's Animals by Pink Floyd. Animals takes its cues from Orwell's Animal Farm, of course, but Roger Waters' lyrics in the album come from a somewhat different place. There certainly is inspiration taken from Orwell around the definitions of the roles of the dogs, pigs, and sheep of Pink Floyd's album. But the lyrical content of Animals is Waters' own. Certainly Orwell would not have thought to write lyrics about Margaret Thatcher or Mary Whitehouse, for example. There are a few other notable examples that come to mind as well. The sensational Alex Harvey Band's song Tomahawk Kid comes directly from Robert Louis Stevenson's Treasure Island. Stevenson, like the members of the Alex Harvey Band, was of Scottish descent, and Alex Harvey often, when introducing Tomahawk Kid at live performances, would make reference of that and dedicate the song to Stevenson. Gentle Giant's Octopus is also based on various literary works, including those of Rabelais and of Lang. And finally, there's literary work that inspired music directly. In particular here, I'm thinking about some of the work that Michael Moorcock did, first with Hawkwind and then later with the American band Blue Oyster Cult. So prog rock and literature for some of these bands went hand in hand. And it made for some very, very interesting and some really great music. As I said at the top of the episode, I'm sure I've forgotten some notable examples here. So please feel free to let me know in the comments what I've missed. And if you'd like to elaborate on some of the comments that I've made here in the video, by all means do that as well. If you liked the episode, as always, please click on like and let me know. Again, please comment where you like. I'll do my best to answer. And if you're not yet a subscriber to Progpaganda, of course, please join us. We're here on a regular basis, sharing interesting stories about the world of progressive rock. Thanks again, and we will see you soon. Bye-bye.